Welcome guys, awesome you're here. Today I'm going to do another microphone review and sound test, and for that I have a dynamic microphone from the company AKG, and it's a vocal microphone, the P5S from the Perception Live range I believe, and as you can see it has the on-off switch right here. And what we're going to do, as you can see, right now we're in the introductory part. At any point in this video, you can jump to the corresponding parts by using the navigation inside the video. Just draw the slider, or in the video description there are the time marks. You can just click on it and, for example, jump directly to the sound test. But since this is neither a super budget mic nor a very expensive mic, I think it's more in the mid-range section, and that's my personal opinion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this to two different devices. First, we're going to connect this mid-range mic to a little bit more expensive tube preamp. Long-term viewers of my channel are probably familiar with the Tube MPC. If you're not, you can find a separate video for the Tube MPC on my channel as well. And then the second device we're going to test is a little bit different. It's also a tube preamp, but it's not a standalone tube preamp. It also doubles as a USB audio interface, which I think this was a little bit inspired by a viewer, because a viewer asked me, oh, I don't want to have a tube preamp and an audio interface. I just want a simple solution, let's say audio interface directly. And you have to remember, this is an XLR mic, yeah? Guys, it's an XLR mic. Most of the beginners seem to gravitate towards USB mics for the simplicity purpose. But maybe, as you can see already, while a USB mic is kind of legitimate if you're a beginner and you want to keep it really super simple, I really think that an XLR mic, it just gives you way more flexibility, because as you can see, you can connect it to multiple devices. And that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I mean, that's why I love XLR mics. You can start out with a mid-range XLR mic connected to a cheap interface. And if you ever feel like it, you upgrade to a more expensive interface. And if then you have a more expensive interface and you are tired of your mid-range mic, you want to try something new, you get a more expensive mic, and it still will work with your interface. So that's why XLR comes in really handy. But what we want to do is we're going to test this mid-range AKG P5S with a budget interface and a more expensive one, and see whether we can hear sound difference and whether we can still get awesome results from this mid-range mic. So guys, without further ado, let's get rolling with the unboxing. Like I said, you can always use the navigation. And after the unboxing part, which I try to keep short, we're gonna jump to the sound test, which is probably gonna be the most interesting. So let's get rolling, guys. Well guys, right now we jump to part 2, the unboxing part of the AKG P5S vocal dynamic microphone. And maybe you have noticed, or maybe I haven't mentioned this before, this microphone even has a super cardioid, let's quickly put this into focus, a super cardioid pickup pattern. So guys, I'm super excited to have a look inside the box of this, what I would describe as a somewhat mid-range microphone. Obviously that's debatable. If you don't think that's a mid-range microphone, let me know in the comment. No, don't let me know in the comments below. But in any case, you get a transport bag, which I always find is super handy to have a little bit of a transport bag. And this is also, as a quick reminder, why I like dynamic microphones in general, irrespective of the brand. Dynamic microphones, I think for beginners, are much easier to handle than these condenser mics. And I also feel they are a little bit more versatile, simply because the dynamic microphone, it mostly picks up the sound directly in front of it, and usually does a fairly good job of rejecting other sounds in your environment. So if you speak, you can imagine maybe you don't have a carpet in your room, or there are some other unfavorable room acoustics. A super sensitive condenser microphone, depending on the mic, may pick up a way more unwanted sounds from your surrounding. And I felt like for beginners, it seems to be easier to get good sounding results with a dynamic microphone if you're just starting out. Having said that, some people, they just like the way condenser mics sound more. So it's basically, it's a matter of taste, but that's precisely why I have different mic reviews on my channel. You see the AKG P5S has the on and off switch, which is kind of handy, and you see that even here, which is kind of cool, nicely made. And yeah, it's a metal housing, a case, so that seems to be a good quality, quite sturdy. And I can also remove this protection at the top so that we can have a closer look at the capsule. Obviously, you want to be super careful when you do that. What I really noticed, since this is a super cardioid pickup pattern, in comparison with the Shure, the capsule is much smaller. This has a way more height to it. So I assume that's because it's super cardioid. It's even more focused on your voice. So that's nice to see. So let's quickly put that back on. And then I also noticed AKG included some kind of microphone guide. And if we just flip this open, boy, I mean, like, guys, this is incredible. See how many different mics this is? And this is on both sides. Holy cow. I mean, like, if one company produces that many microphones, I mean, you can imagine that like a normal customer gets a little bit of an overwhelm when like, oh my God, which microphone should I choose if one company produces 100 different mics and the second company does the same and so on. So, I mean, to answer this question, I think like most mics, they work pretty well. I mean, if you just play around a little bit, you quickly get the experience. I mean, I've tested a variety of different mics on my channel, and usually it's rare that I encounter problems with the equipment. I mean, yeah, granted, once I had a super sensitive condenser mic that picked up too much room acoustic, or once one mic did produce a little bit of a humming noise, but I mean, it's very infrequent that I run into any issues. Usually, I'm really surprised, no matter the manufacturer, how much microphone you can get for a budget price. So this is the microphone holder. Always make sure to double check whether this small screw is in here, because my microphone stand has this smaller thread. So I always want to make sure I can put that on my microphone stand. But everything is included. Guys, this concludes the unboxing part of the AKG P5S Super Cardioid dynamic microphone. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to jump to part 3, the sound test. Test this microphone with 2 different audio interfaces, and maybe I can even compare a super cardioid such as this with just a cardioid, so you even hear the sound of 2 different mics. So let's jump to the sound test part. Let's get going. So guys, excellent. We jumped to part 3A of the AKG Perception Live P5S microphone sound test, and right now in part 3A we're testing the microphone with a budget interface from Behringer. And yeah, I mean, what do you think about the sound? How does it sound? It's a super cardioid pickup pattern. That means it should be really super focused on my voice right now. And if there would be a little bit noise in my surrounding, it should do a really good job at canceling out the sounds, presumably even better than just a normal cardioid pickup pattern, because super cardioid should be even more focused, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah guys, what do you think? Does this budget interface sound good? I mean, this is like the thing that the viewer asked me, how do I get a good sound? I mean, right now we have a mid-range mic. The P5S is a mid-range mic, and the Behringer Mic 500 USB is a little bit on the budget side when it comes to USB audio interfaces. And yeah, obviously, since it's an entry-level USB audio interface, the analog to digital converters are probably somewhat of a standard analog to digital converter, so it's not going to be a high-end or a very good upper middle class digital to audio analog converter. But even the normal, the consumer grade digital to audio converters, they do a good job as far as I can see. And combined, and that's, I think, the really interesting combination, combined with that tube, it still creates that warm sound. So guys, I'm surprised what these companies can do for a budget price to have like this kind of audio quality gear. And just if you're curious, I also tested this same kind of setup with a more affordable mic. So you could even take a mic that costs less than the AKG
and it still produces surprisingly good results. And from all I can say is, if a viewer from my channel, sometimes they, I mean, not sometimes, rarely, a few viewers, they have some issues because they have some specialized live streaming setups on the Windows with this software and that software, and they're routing the signals. So sometimes I really think it's not the audio hardware that messes up your results. Sometimes it's also the user, yeah. Because if I would turn the volume up too high, obviously it would be distorted, and that's really also what I noticed personally from doing YouTube videos. Most of the time, if I don't get the result that I want, it's maybe I changed the setting wrongly on the camera, yeah. The camera has the auto white balance on, or the levels are set too high or something like that. So from all the equipment that I tested, the equipment for the most part, it works almost flawlessly. And if there is some issue, it's often like user generated. So you want to be aware of that, so that you get the best results. Because you buy the hardware, you want to get the best results out of it. So that's also a user thing. How do you use the equipment? Mic technique, how do you position it? What's your room acoustics? So there's a lot of other things besides the hardware that's actually interesting, that gives you this nice sound. So before I digress any further, let's jump to sound test part 3B. You have learned something new about mics. I'm always reminding you, maybe it's a little bit repetitive if you have watched some of my videos, but like Robert Kiyosaki always says, repetition is how we learn. So sometimes repetition is a good thing. Let's switch over to the more expensive audio equipment and see whether the mid-range mic with the little bit more expensive hardware sounds better, or whether it's almost the same. So let's jump to part 3B with the more expensive preamp. Awesome, guys. Now we jumped to sound test part 3B. As you can see in the navigation, I hope I'm pointing in the right direction. Now we're listening to the mid-range mic from AKG with a little bit more expensive audio gear. We have a Art Pro Tube MPC. It's kind of like a little bit of a specialty product, but I really like this preamp, and I got this back in the day to make audio recordings, because my old Firewire interface unfortunately doesn't have a microphone input. So in my case, I really needed this third device, and that's another major difference that I again want to point out, that previously we had two devices. We just had the microphone and this cheap interface, and now we have three devices. We have the microphone, a little bit specialty preamp, and my old audio interface that's not in a picture right now. But yeah, guys, what do you think? Is it worth to buy a little bit more expensive audio gear to use with your mid-range mic? I really am a big fan of tube preamps, so that's why I often have tube preamps in use to test the mics with. I think the tube gives this mic a really nice warm touch. And yeah, a viewer once asked me, how do I get this nice sounding results? That maybe, I think the most people want this kind of radio voice, and obviously it's not kind of total radio voice, but tube preamps are tube preamps. And yeah, I mean, you can always customize it. For example, right now it's a Chinese stock tube in there, but you could change the tube if you wanted to with, let's say, Electro Harmonics, or there are lots of different tube manufacturers. The Electro Harmonics is a Russian tube for the tube preamp, but you could pick a tube from any country. If your country makes, let's say, I mean, I have never seen like German tubes. Maybe I haven't looked hard enough, but that would be kind of funny. Instead of a Russian tube, have a German tube for my tube preamp. But guys, I digress. As you see, it's for the most part, for my testing, the sound results are really good. Almost no matter which hardware you use, as long as you make a somewhat reasonable combination. And like I said, XLR mics, I like XLR mics. This is an XLR mic, it's not a USB mic. I like them because you can mix and match them with all sorts of equipment. If I wanted to, I can, at some point in the future, if that's not enough for me, I can sell this interface and get like a universal audio interface, or I could get a rack-mounted preamp or whatever. So you can really change out equipment and just see how it sounds, and then you learn in the process, and eventually you pick a really good combination and then eventually you will have the radio voice a couple years down the road, and make nice voiceovers or podcasts, and everybody's going to be marveling how did the dude do it. And yeah, that's all there's to say about it, guys. I'm gonna jump right now to part 4, the summary and conclusion part. Awesome you stayed with me. You have learned something and had listen to some sound tests. Really terrific. Great mic. I like this mic. And let's jump to the conclusion. Let's go.
Now guys, we jump to part 4, the summary and conclusion part. And this concludes the review and sound test of the AKG Perception Live P5S. I hope I remembered this right. Not so easy always to talk into the camera. I encourage you to try to make a YouTube video yourself. Then you will know how it feels to talk into the camera. It's kind of funny. But in any case, I really like this microphone. We tested it with 2 different pieces of audio gear, a more expensive one and a budget one. And in both cases, they had a tube, which I always like because with a tube, you get a really nice sound out of all your microphones. I really love these tube preamps. And both devices performed reasonably well. The mic performed reasonably well with both, the more expensive one as well as the budget hybrid one, which also was a USB audio interface. So if you're just starting out, that would be maybe one of the suggestions that I can make. Maybe take one of these hybrid preamps, or if you have already a USB audio interface, consider testing a tube preamp, because that always creates a nice warm sound, something that I personally like. Guys, this concludes this review. I have lots of other useful content on my channel. Just head over to my channel page and look under the audio section, because there you can find a bunch of different reviews for condenser mics, dynamic mics, as well as various audio interfaces. I'm excited you have tuned in. I see you as a subscriber, and in the next video, have fun with your new audio equipment, whatever it might be. And I see you in the next video. Take care.
And because you just watched my review of the AKG P5S microphone, you may also be interested in comparing some audio interfaces, such as this Yamaha AG03 mixer that I reviewed recently, because that could also be a potential fit for the AKG mic. Guys, I see you as a subscriber on my channel, and maybe even on one of my online courses. All the best to you, and have fun with your new equipment. Take care.